This is episode 80 of the Why Not Me podcast. Practice your desires. I'm your host, Danita Bremer. I'm a wife, mom, member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a life coach. And in this podcast, I talk about how to overcome our inner obstacles to endure this life well. Okay, today I want to talk about something that has come up in not one, but two client calls in the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to do some research, but I never really sat down to do that. So I'm going to be talking a little bit off the cuff here, some of my own kind of theories. But I think that you'll find some interesting things for you to think about. It's something that I'm still pondering, and this is having to do with our desires and how we've practiced squashing our desires and the effects that has on our lives and our relationships, especially, and what to do about it. So, one of my theories, as I've become a coach and practice these coaching principles, just self-help principles, one theory I have is that our desires are what make us who we are. Our desires give us our unique kind of thumbprint on the world. If we all had the same desires, then we would be like little clones of each other, right? So that's sort of an underlying assumption here. Now, if you don't believe that, then none of this, I think there still will be value here, but it might not be as compelling. Let's put it that way. I think exercising, expressing, living your desires is what makes you you, and it is what gives you purpose. So many of you out there, and I include myself in this category, want to know what your purpose is. And my advice, the simplest advice I can give is if you want to know what your purpose is, follow your desires, not follow your heart, not follow the fun, although those are both integral parts of this, but really figure out what it is you want and desire, and then go live into that, at least in small ways. I think that the world wins. The world is a better place when we allow our desires, because we become more of who we are. Now, for myself and many, many people that I talk to and many of my clients, we have a lifelong practice of ignoring our desires or pushing our desires down or squashing them in some way, just like not allowing them to be. And overall, I have found that if you do this for many years, long term, that it shows up as resentment and disconnection. Sometimes it even shows up as like awkwardness because it's like, oh, I haven't ever done this. So this is kind of awkward. I want to take a tiny little detour here and talk about those of us who grew up in dysfunctional households and creating safety meant making other people happy, right? Giving into their desires. Your own safety, your own survival, depending on other people in your household being happy or just not being angry, could set you up for a kind of codependent relationship where you are more concerned with how other people feel and you put your own feelings and desires down. I think that this is a big part of why we have this epidemic of us not knowing who we are and not understanding our own desires, because it wasn't safe to do so all the time in the homes we grew up in. So I just kind of wanted to point that out because it makes sense why you don't put your desires first, why you don't live into your desires, right? Now, that can change with practice. That's why I named this episode Practice Your Desires, because just like you've practiced ignoring your desires, you can practice allowing your desires and you can bring those back into your life. It's not the end. It's not like oh, I've lived my whole life not allowing my desires. Now my life is ruined. No, you can start right now by identifying, experimenting, and living, allowing your desires. Okay. Now let's talk about some of the ways when we ignore our desires. And I'm just going to use ignore as kind of an umbrella term of, pushing down, pushing away, not listening to our desires. When we do this over a long term period of time, it affects our marriage, our marriages, it affects our parenthood, it affects our spirituality, our relationships with God, and it affects our relationship with ourselves. And I want to talk about what this might look like. So, I have a client and I didn't get permission, so I'm not going to use her name, but a couple client sessions ago, we were talking about her being able to take time for herself this summer. She has multiple children, and she was like, you know what I want to do this summer? I just want to have like a day a week where I get to do what I want to do. I want to go on hikes. I want to go out kayaking on the lake. And like she had these things that she wanted to do, right? But then she would tell herself, oh, but I can't do that because I have to be available for my kids, or what if this, or what if that? So all of these things start flooding into her as soon as she starts thinking about, I would love to take one day a week this summer and just do what I want to do. So in the session, we were talking about this and why wouldn't she be able to do that? And kind of logistically, how could she make time? And would there need to be conversations, or would she just do it? Like all of that kind of stuff. Right. And at some point, which this is very common with my clients, we get a little bit deeper and deeper into the core of the issue. And it becomes like, I can't handle talking about this. So they like change the topic. Right. So at some point she started talking about her marriage and intimacy. And sometimes I'll allow this to happen as the coach, because I think when this happens, it's actually related. And so I'm sometimes curious about, how is this related? Sometimes I don't allow my clients to change topics because I want to hold them in this space and like really not force, but guide them to like, this is important. Let's really look at this. And if you're feeling vulnerable, like there's a reason here. But in this case, I kind of let her switch topics. She starts talking about her marriage and intimacy. And eventually I realized we're talking about the same thing. In our marriages, when we squash our desires, when we ignore our desires, when we think that, sex is for my husband, it's not really for me, and I just have to like help him fulfill his desires, his own desires, what it turns into is a lot of resentment and disconnection and frustration. So we're going to see some of these emotions showing up over and over again. But what she was describing, my client, was that she said, I actually do want to be intimate sometimes, but not the way he wants to, right? Like I want it to be slower and more sensual, and I want to be touched in different ways than how he wants to be touched, right? And I said, this is about the same thing. It's about you taking time for yourself and speaking up for your own needs and wobbling in that awkwardness, right? It's like, I've been married for 20 years. And for me to speak up now feels a little bit awkward. It feels like I should have been having these conversations when I was newlywed, right? And sometimes that's true, right? Sometimes when we're newlywed, we don't have the self-awareness, we don't have the confidence, or whatever the situation is, to be able to speak up for ourselves. And now we're like 20 years down the road, and it's like, ooh, well, now I want to say like, hey, husband, can we try this? Can we do this? Can we, and one thing I pointed out to her is that when you ignore your desire and you're always doing something for someone else, it's almost like your agency is ignored too, because then you drop into this habit of like, okay, yes, we can be intimate, but only on his terms, right? And so I don't really have a say. I don't really have agency here. I'm just kind of like the victim of my circumstance here. And it's not true. It's just that we've created this over time, right? And one thing that we talked about was she was talking about how she said, I do actually have feelings and desires for sex, but I don't know how to tell my husband that. And I think he's going to have thoughts and it's going to feel awkward. I'm going to be embarrassed, right? Because for so long, she had been telling herself, I don't really want to be intimate. I don't really have that desire. And over the last several months, we've been working together. She's been letting her desires out in little ways. And now she wants to let her desire out in a more intimate, vulnerable way. Right. So over time of her ignoring and squashing her desire, it kind of turned into some resentment of like, this isn't really fun for me. And I just have to do it for my husband, which turns out being very disconnecting. Right. So that's one example. The next example, and I'm going to use the same client because in that same session, we talked about parenting, we talked about marriage, and we talked about her just wanting to do things for herself, which all ended up being really the same root problem. So in our parenthood, in our motherhood, which is one of our most treasured relationships, right? Our marriages, our kids, and ourselves and God. Those are like the top four, I think. She was talking about how, well, I can't really take time for myself, or I can't just designate a certain day because then what if my kids need me? What if they need to make plans? What if they can't work around it? Right. And I just kept thinking, well, yeah, what if? I mean, you're always allowed to change your plans. You could say every Monday is going to be my day. And then if something comes up on that Monday and you decide, you know what, I'm not going to take time for myself this Monday because I would rather be there for my kids or whatever, you get to decide that. It's not like it's set in stone, right? The funny part is that it's so hard for us to decide, like, I get to take time for myself because we're so concerned with what will other people think? Well, how will my kids deal with it? Will they be disappointed? Will they be angry with me? Will they have to do some work that I normally do for them? Right. And so all of this comes up when we think about honoring our own desires, practicing our own desires. There's some things that are going to come up for you. Like, well, logistically, how does this look? What if I don't have anything I want to do that day? Right. And so we talked about having kind of a default, like if I don't have another plan, this is the plan. Right. So, and then the more emotional stuff comes up, like, what if my kids need me? What if I tell them, I'm sorry, but this is my day and you're just going to have to suck it up and deal with it? And then they feel angry or disappointed or upset. What if? Right now, all the things that we are so concerned somebody else might feel because we take time to practice our desires are the things that we've been allowing ourselves to feel all these years. Right. And if you are younger listening to this, if you have younger children, I hope that you really take this to heart because you can head this off at the past. You can decide, you know what? I'm always going to have something I do just for me. And that's going to be part of the fabric of our family life because it's so much easier to start out that way than to ignore your desires for years and years and then to try to reintroduce it. And everyone's going, whoa, wait a second. We're not used to this. Right. But if they're used to it, when my kids were little, my husband and I always would date. There were times when it was more and times when it was less, but pretty regularly we would go on dates and my kids got used to it. And so when we went on a date and we hired a babysitter, and I recognized that we were financially blessed enough to be able to afford that throughout most of our marriage, we would hire a babysitter and we would tell the sitter, we don't care. You can let them watch TV. You can play with them, do whatever you want, just like whatever's fun for you all. And so my kids started getting used to this and they started being like, hey, when's the babysitter going to come? Because we want to watch TV and play with our friends, right? Our babysitter friends. And so we set up this expectation that it's fun for the kids when mom and dad go on a date. Right. So they wouldn't like cry and be upset when we left. And when they were very little, they would still do that. But we wanted it to be fun for the kids because we wanted it to be fun for the babysitters because we wanted to have babysitters that would come watch our kids. And then there's a magical day that happens when your oldest gets old enough to be the babysitter. And then you have a whole different set of problems, like older sister is the babysitter, but older sister and younger brother are fighting. So what happens then, right? So it's not all rainbows and daisies, is all I'm saying to you, younger moms. But if you can set a precedent, make it part of the fabric of your life, of you having things that you do just for you, because that's who mommy is, right? And mommy isn't just somebody who does things for daddy and does things for kids and never does anything for herself. It'll be so much easier, I promise you. But for those of you who are older moms and have older kids who are used to you not taking time for yourself, this is what this episode is more about, is like, how do we course correct after we've kind of gone down this dead end? And it really is a dead end because it deadens us inside, right? In our parenthood, when we don't allow ourselves to have our own desires, again, it shows up as resentment. I think it shows up a lot as guilt. I am not the kind of mom when my kids were little that I would like really play with my kids a lot. I would play with my kids from time to time, but only for short little snippets. And I would tell them, mommy doesn't play with you. That's what your friends are for. That's why you have siblings. That's why we have neighbors, right? Those are the people for playing. Mommy reads to you. Mommy makes you meals. Mommy takes you places, right? Like I had things that I enjoyed doing with my kids, but like getting down on my hands and knees and playing pretend, not one of my things. I would do it occasionally, but I didn't love it. So I didn't do it very often or for very long. And my kids got used to this, right? They're like, oh, mommy doesn't play this way. It's just how mommy is, right? So I kind of feel like for me, I naturally cling really tightly to who I am and make space for that. But for sure, there have been years and years that I haven't allowed myself to do what I want to do because I want to do it. In fact, really, my whole life has been that way. It's been very small little ways. Like, no, I'm not the kind of mom that plays make believe with you, right? I'm the kind of mom that will go to the park and I'll swing you on the swings, or I'll stand for you at the bottom of the slide when you come down, right? I do different things. I'm the kind of mom that will take you to the pool and I'll sit there at the edge of the pool. I'll get in if it's really hot, but I don't really like getting wet all that much. So that's the kind of mom I am. I'm the kind of mom that thinks ahead and packs an amazing lunch for you when we go out on a hike or something like that, right? So my kids got used to that, but there were other ways that I did ignore my desires. And I did feel like, oh, I'm such a bad mom because I don't do XYZ, right? It shows up as frustration. So resentment makes sense because it's like, oh, I can't do this. And so what resentment is when we have a need or a desire that doesn't get met and we blame it on someone else kind of subconsciously, right? Well, I can't do that because I have to be there for my kids. And so then we resent our kids, or I can't do that because my husband, blah, blah, blah. And then we resent our husband, right? And guilt because we say, oh, I'm such a bad mom because I don't do this, or because I do that. I'm such a bad mom because I yell at my kids. Well, you yell at your kids because you're not honoring your desires and you don't feel rested and rejuvenated in any way in your life, right? It's like a reaction to this. So there's a lot of frustration that comes out when we don't honor our desires in our parenthood as well. Okay, it also affects our relationship with God. When we say, well, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do that. I can't drink coffee. I can't drink alcohol. I can't smoke cigarettes. I can't take drugs. I can't, play on Sunday, whatever it is that we're like, this is how I live the commandments. Then again, resentment, right? It's like, I can't do this and I really want to. And it's because God won't let me. And so I feel resentful toward him. But also, it's like we don't know ourselves because we're so busy blaming God or our kids or our spouse that we don't say, hey, what part of this is me? And what can I do? Right. And so we don't give ourselves space and time to experiment within the bounds of the rules and the commandments that we want to follow, right? Sometimes it shows up as overwhelm. Like there's so much I can't do. I just don't even know where to start. So I'm going to do nothing, right? Like the gospel can be overwhelming to some people because they look at it and they're like, there's so much I don't understand and so much I can't do. And it feels like a squashing of their own identity and their own selves and their own desires, right? I don't think that that's what God wants for us. I think God actually is like, come and be yourself. Show me what you desire. Show me what you want. And let's figure out how it fits in the gospel plan. But when we're so busy, like I said, resenting God or feeling overwhelmed or feeling confused, we don't have the space, like the last couple episodes, holding space and making space. We don't have the space to explore with creativity what it might look like to have our own desires and to follow the commandments, right? It's very connected to your relationship with yourself. When you ignore your desires, you disconnect from yourself, right? Like I said at the top of the episode, your desires are what make you you. And so when you don't allow your desires, when you don't practice them regularly, you are disconnecting from yourself. And you know what that leads to? First of all, it leads to low self-esteem because it's like you don't even know who you are because you're not connected to who you are. But more importantly, it leads to lack of joy. You can't have joy when every time you feel a desire, you shut it down, right? Let's talk about what happens in that process. Think about yourself as like a 3 or 4-year-old kid. Maybe you have a desire, you want a candy bar, or you want to go play with a friend. You want something, right? You want to watch a TV show and you express your desire. Mommy, daddy, can I go play with my friends? Can I have that candy bar at the store? And then your desire gets shot down. No, sorry. We can't have a candy bar today. No, sorry. Friends can't play today. Can't play with the friends today. And what happens? We feel disappointment. We're like, in this moment, I want you to put yourself in that position of feeling the desire for the candy bar or the friends or whatever it is. And then your parents telling you, I'm so sorry. No, we can't do that. And maybe they're not so nice about it, right? How do you feel? You feel that disappointment, that letdown, that emptiness. And that happens over and over again. You feel the desire, you express it, it gets shot down, you feel disappointment. You feel the desire, you express it, it gets shot down, you feel disappointment. What is going to happen when that happens 100 times? What are you going to start doing? Yeah, you're going to start shutting your desire down. You're going to feel the desire and go, nope, this isn't good. I know exactly where this is going to lead to that disappointment down the road. So we're just not even going to feel that desire. I don't want that. We start telling ourselves, yeah, I don't really want that. I don't really want to go hang out with my friends. I know my parents will just say no, right? Have you ever done this when you were, a little bit older of a kid or a teenager, when you're like, you go to your parents with your head kind of hanging and you're like, I think I know you're just going to tell me no, but can I go to so-and-so's house? Right? Like you want to sort of like, yeah, I'm probably just going to be disappointed. So it's fine. It's okay. But can I ask anyway? And that's because our desires have voices no matter if we practice them or not. They come out, they ooze out of the cracks and the crevices in ourselves. We can't stop them. We can either honor them or ignore them. I have another client who we've been coaching around this for a while, and it finally came to this crystal clear realization that what would happen for her, she's a very curious person. She's very open and just wants to learn about everything and wants to experience everything. And for her, her childhood was filled with, you can't do that. Nope, you can't. You're the youngest. You can't do that. You're not big enough. You're not old enough. You don't understand. You can't. You'll never be able to do that because you won't make money at it. right? So she had all these messages from her parents and from her older siblings. You can't, you can't, you can't. So she would feel that desire just because she was like, that sounds fun. I want to try that. Hey, mom, can I do gymnastics? And mom's saying, I just don't want to put you in gymnastics because you'll only do it for 3 months and then you'll quit. So I'm not going to do all that just for you to quit. So no, you can't do it. So she would feel the desire. She would get all excited. She would dream about it. She would ask, and it would be shut down. No, you can't. And then here was an interesting twist. She would say, oh, yeah, I'll prove it. I can do it. So she would try to prove herself because so much of the you can'ts that she was hearing were about you're not capable. You won't be able to. You'll just quit. You won't follow through. And so she started hearing all these messages about how it was like about her and the fabric of her being. And so she would feel the desire, it would get shut down, and then she would say, okay, I'll prove it to you. And then she would start doing things out of a proving energy. So, and this followed her into adulthood, right? So she became a coach. And her dad, she was giving me the example of one time she told her dad, I think I want to do photography. It sounds fun. It sounds interesting. And her dad said, no, you can't do that. You'll never be able to make money doing that. And so she's like, oh, yeah, I'll prove it. So she took all these photography classes, if I'm remembering correctly. And she said, now I look back and I'm like, I don't even think I really wanted to. I just was doing it to prove him wrong. Right. And that's where she got in her coaching business, where she got excited and, it was interesting for her at first. And then it turned into this proving energy. You know why? Because that was her habit. Because she had a desire, it got shut down. She started proving it. So now, even when her parents weren't there to say, you can't do that, you'll never be able to do it, you won't make money, blah, 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 she automatically went from desire, shut down, prove. And then once she started proving it, it stopped being so open and fun and exciting. And so then she would quit because it wasn't fun anymore, because she was doing it to prove herself, not doing it because it was fun, right? So in this session, we started seeing this pattern, and we had touched on certain parts of it in previous sessions, but we had never really seen the pattern. Oh, this is why you always quit. Because you get in the fast lane and it's fun and exciting and full of possibility. And then somebody says you can't do that. And so you switch over to the middle lane and you say, okay, I'll prove it to you. And you eventually that middle lane's not fun anymore. And so you pull off to the side. And then you get in the fast lane. And then you get in the middle lane. And then you pull off to the side. And she's at this place where she's like, gosh, I just feel so depressed. I don't want to do anything for any reason. And I'm like, it sure as heck makes sense to me, because over and over again, you get on the freeway and you get in the fast lane and then somebody tells you you can't do that. And so you get in the middle lane and you're like, this isn't so fun, but I'm going to keep doing it because I'm going to prove it to you. And then you get tired. And so you pull off and you quit. And now you're sitting here on the side of the road going, why do I ever get on the road? And it's not that you don't want to get on the road. It's that you want to be in the fast lane and you want somebody to not tell you you can't do it. You want people to tell you, go ahead, get in the fast lane, do it. We'll cheer you on. And she started crying. She was like, oh my gosh, that's it. I just want somebody to tell me, to give me permission that I can do it. I've been trying all these years. I've been having all these desires and all these interests, and they just keep getting shut down. Now she's a grown adult, and this pattern came from childhood. But now she's an adult. Now she can see the pattern and she can choose. But for the longest time, it didn't feel like she could choose because the pattern was set. This is just what we do. I don't have a choice. This is what we do. Until we slow it all down and we think about, where is our choice, right? So she felt so disconnected from herself. She felt such a lack of joy in her life because of this pattern that she had set up from childhood, which was really just her own parents' pattern. You can't do that. You won't be able to make enough money, which was her dad, right? His own baggage around what he was supposed to do. You can't do that because you'll just quit. So I don't want to go through all the work, all the hassle of it, which was her mom's baggage, right? We take on other people's baggage as our own. And we don't even realize it, right? So what I'm inviting you to do is to recognize where you have been ignoring your own desires and maybe even why. Is it something from my mom or my dad or my siblings or school or spouse or who in your life taught you to ignore that desire? And can you take it back from them? Right? Now, allowing your desire is a practice. It's not like, oh, I want to learn how to sew. I want to learn how to garden. And then we just do it. Just like you've been ignoring your desire for 30, 40, 50 years, however old you are, probably, you've been practicing that. You've been practicing feeling the desire and then shutting it down, feeling the desire and then shutting it down. And what we have to practice now is feeling the desire and following it, feeling the desire and making space for it, feeling the desire and following through with it in some little way. Now, I hear you. I hear some of you going, yes, I want to travel the world. Feeling the desire, and I don't have money to travel the world. I have kids who are in school and I can't take them away. And feeling the desire to if I was in high school about to enter my junior year of high school, I wouldn't want to go travel the world either. I'd want to stay with my friends. So I'm not saying that there are not legitimate reasons to ignore your desires, but can we shrink it down to a really small version? What is it about traveling that you're so interested in? Is it learning about new cultures? Can you go to the library and immerse yourself in a book about a different culture for an hour? You might not have the finances, the time, all of it to do all of it the way you would dream in your wildest imagination. But do you have an hour to honor that in some small way? If you want to travel the world, is it about meeting different people for you? And can you meet different people in your own community, in your own ward, in your own neighborhood? What does it look like on a small version? There might be a few of you out there that say, yes, I've always wanted to travel the world and I have the time and I have the money. So I would ask you, what is holding you back? Why haven't you done it? Oh, but I would miss my grandkids. Or, oh, I'd have to sell my house and that's just overwhelming. I want you, if you have the time and the money, I want you to really think about the excuses that come up. Is it true? Do I have to sell my house? Maybe there's some things there that you've never noticed before. Right now, your inner critic will tell you, you can't, that's stupid, you're not worthy. And I just want to give you full permission to just ignore that voice inside your head. Tell that voice, you know what? I've been listening to you for a long time. It's time for me to listen to the other voice, that other really quiet voice, that voice that says, but what if we could? That voice that says, I want to do this. And what if you were your own cheerleader that said, yes, let's go do it? And it could be as simple as, I want to take a walk by myself once a day. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes that you can take a walk by yourself once a day? That voice that says, I've always wanted to learn how to make chocolate. Can you invite your kids in and learn how to make chocolate? Stop making excuses and start getting creative. Stop saying, well, I can't because this, because that, because this other thing. And start thinking about, but I could because this, because that. Get creative. You are a creator. We are all naturally creators. And this is one of the reasons why I say our desires are part of who we are, because our desires lead us into our creations. It is available to you. I promise you, in some way, your desires have space in your life. And when you honor them and when you practice them, especially practice feeling the desire and not shutting it down, what would that look like to you? What would it feel like? Maybe it's just, oh, I think I want to eat a banana. And then going and eating a banana. Imagine that. Maybe it's when you go out to eat and you're like, oh, I never know what to get. What should I get? What are you getting? And instead being like, I really want some French fries. And then ordering French fries, right? Because it's a practice. And the more you think, I think I want this, and then you do it, the more you create space for more desires, the more you learn about yourself. It's a beautiful process. And I really hope that you start doing it, because the more you lean into yourself, the more you practice those desires, the more you become. And we really want you in the world. You make the world a beautiful tapestry. Your golden thread is exactly what we need. That's enough for now, and so are you. If you enjoyed this episode, would you please give it a rating and a review and share it with a friend? And if you're ready to let your desires out, go to danitabremmer.com and schedule a free session with me. Until next time, go be you and follow the Spirit.